meditacionesdiarias.com.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Lorena Maya reading to you from Minnesota. This is our adult devotional titled, I Am With You, Bible Promises for a Life of Full Assurance. Today's date is May 28th, 2023. Our title, An Example That You Should Follow in His Steps. In the first book of Peter, chapter 2, verse 21 says, To this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. The picaresque novel La Vida de Lazarillo de Tormes, which is The Life of Lazarillo de Tormes, was published in Spain in 1554. Its author tells us about the hardships of Lazarus, a young man who was born in a mill by the Tormes River. When Lazarus was 12 years old, his mother gave him up to serve as a guide for a tricky, cunning, greedy, and very stingy blind man. In order to survive, Lazarillo, as the sightless man called him, had to put into practice the blind man's trickeries. One day, a grape harvester gave him a cluster of grapes as charity. The blind man called Lazarillo and struck a deal with him. I will be generous with you. Each of us will eat one grape, but promise me you won't take more than one grape at a time. I will do the same. The first round they kept their promise. But the second round, the blind man changed his mind and began taking 2 at a time. What did Lazarillo do? Following the blind man's malicious influence, he began taking 3 at a time. When reading Lazarillo de Tormes, it's interesting to note that both he and the blind man seem like 2 characters from the 21st century. Despite the centuries that have gone by, humans are still the same. Postmodernism has not brought us better examples or made us less selfish, and we are still prone to emulate what we see in our surroundings. Therefore, we need the best model for our behavior, and that model is Christ. The Apostle Peter said it this way, To this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. The Greek word translated as example, hypogrammos, was used in classical Greek to refer to lines drawn by a teacher to guide a child who was learning to write. A teacher would draw them, and students would then write on them. That's precisely what Christ did. He came to the world to give us a life example to follow, lines whose outlines mold a character after God's own heart. There is no injustice, wickedness, cunning, or craftiness in Jesus' example. He is an example of responsibility, modesty, self-control. God has called us to follow that model, not the example of blind men we find on our way, who are blind because they don't have spiritual sight. Thank you so much for joining and listening in, and I wish you a very blessed day.
Thank you for joining us. We invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel at m.youtube.com/c/Meditaciones Diarias and to follow us on our social media in Instagram at www.instagram.com/meditacionesdiarias7. May God bless you and your family.